Welcome to the Exponential Potential podcast. Ignite your potential and thrive in times of great change with your hosts, Jennifer Evans and Claire Oatway. Join us and feel uplifted and inspired as we share with you powerful and insightful stories, top tips and tools with our expert guests on an array of topics covering all aspects of life and business, designed to ignite your potential and help you thrive in times of great change.
Hello and welcome to this fabulous episode of our Exponential Potential podcast. I have a very special guest with me today. All our guests are special, but this guest is particularly special. My co-host and cohort, Claire Oatway, and today we are going to be talking about power and presence, how to get it without being a complete bitch. I have struggles saying words like that, but yes, I know what you mean, because when we think of power, we think we have to be a complete, as a woman, we have to be a complete bitch.
Absolutely. Or we need to grow a set of balls.
Which is not the sort of thing that, as a, with female energy, we don't necessarily want to. It's an incredibly masculine statement. Yeah. So let me introduce you to Claire Oatway. And Claire believes, and I believe as well, actually, anything is possible. And most of us settle both in life and in business without stretching outside our comfort zones, without daring to push those boundaries, to embrace the magic that's found outside. That wasn't a mindset that Claire was born with, but it's one that you've developed, and I'm sure we'll talk about that in a little while. And you've helped others to stretch further than they've dreamed. That just sounds wonderful. So through your business, Neon Juno, you provide high-performance executive and business coaching, helping your clients achieve what they didn't think was possible. You're here to coach and push them outside their familiar to find their true potential. So I understand, and from what I've learned working with you, you are most definitely a change maker, and you've been recognized a tree shaker and you've been recognized internationally as an inspirational and innovative leader, a pioneer, a success coach who can show and empower your clients to transform, to achieve results and solutions, and embrace the power of neon-tinged confidence. And I would love to know all about what neon-tinged confidence is that will serve your clients for a lifetime. So welcome, Claire. It's wonderful to be interviewing you.
Is this the point
we get to play?
We apologise to our listeners now for the giggling?
Yes.
The potential swearing that might happen as we have our really candid conversations. It just, uncensored.
Yes. Oh. Yes. Yeah. And I think candid is a really good word, and it kind of, candid and vulnerability kind of come together, I think, don't they, when you can get really vulnerable and really candid. Yeah. So let's dive in and we'll talk about leadership first. And what do you see are the common leadership struggles, or what do you see with your clients, with the businesses that you work with, as the struggles with leadership?
Sure. And so by way of introduction to that, I've been working with leaders over the last 20, 30 years, sometimes within a corporate environment, sometimes facilitating leaders, having conversations about policy and strategy and performance management, sometimes tough conversations, helping leaders to respond after really huge reputational issues like poor inspections or, you know, kind of very poor performance, and really lifting up leaders from that perspective, right the way through to bringing together cohorts of leaders that run an entire city together. So I've seen the full spectrum of leadership kind of within the public sector, within the private sector, in the political kind of public domain, and also behind closed doors. And there are definitely common threads. One of the biggest issues for many leaders is around this sense of busyness. You know, there's just so much going on, so many demands, back-to-back Zooms, kind of political queries come in, yeah, the latest fire that needs to be put out. And so it can be really hard to stay present and calm, to avoid bringing emotion to the table, because you're often forced to react rather than be in a sage place. Sometimes as well, as you develop and grow, particularly early to mid stage in terms of leadership, so your ego comes to bear more and more. And that's just a natural response. The kind of, for many people, when they first pick up the title of leadership, it's because they're spotted as being really good at what they do, and so they keep being that because they've been rewarded for that, and they don't quite acknowledge that the shift that they have to make is to help everybody else in the room be as good as them, or if not better, and to nurture that talent pool. And then as you rise through the ranks, as it were, you just see so much ego and power play going on as people protect their interests, protect their team, demonstrate how good they are. And particularly, you know, we joked at the top of the conversation about growing a set of balls, but particularly within a corporate environment, it's a very, very macho, competitive environment at times, that shifts away from the direction of the organization, but can be really combative, whether intentionally or not. So for a lot of leaders, either kind of the senior leaders, there's that real challenge about how you keep the direction of the business on track when all of this is going on, not beneath you, but around you. And those leaders who are caught in the combat, how can you be true to yourself without being damaged or damaging yourself? Yeah.
And I think, as you say, the ego is such a big player in that environment. And I think also within teams, you know, like you said, you want to encourage your team to grow with you. But do you find a lot of leaders but keep their team down because they see them as a threat to their position?
Yeah. And yeah, kind of there are many different archetypes, you know, within an organization, but there are often leaders who claim all the credit for the work, or they want to shine and demonstrate how good they are. There are leaders who will not deliberately, or they're not deliberately, they will deliberately leave people out of the bigger political meetings because they want to shine, they want to kind of build their own careers up. Sometimes it's the other way around, and so kind of they're shielding their team from you know, some of those other political pressures, which again doesn't necessarily help the team to fully be who they can be. I think that as well, you know, it can often feel quite a natural response for leaders, particularly in that first level of leadership, because they have been recognized as being really good at what they do. That technical leadership is, you know, that's really key, and we see that in many different team leaders. And so sometimes other people being seen as good feels like a threat to your power position, like they'll overtake you, or that you'll return back without power. And so you keep people at bay. I don't necessarily put them forward for the exciting, juicy projects, or
So how do you, two questions actually. One, what are the reasons or the benefits of a leader to change that mindset? How does that how can you create benefit around making the most of your team players and focusing on their strengths? How do you change that so that leaders, because they have a massive impact at work, don't they, in our businesses, in business, and we spend so many hours of our days at work in business. So how do you shift that with a leader that sees people as a threat? How do you help them see the benefits? And how do you then change their mindset? Or is that kind of go hand in hand?
Well, I think it's because so few people really understand power, leadership, and authority, and how they mix up together. And it's exactly the right word, because leaders who don't feel empowered or are self-disempowered, kind of they will try to control a situation as tightly as they can. They will manage it really closely because it's seen as a threat to their reputation, to kind of their source of reward, how they're seen to other people if they're failing to deliver. So ultimately, at its core, kind of a leader who acts in that way is feeling disempowered. Whether they will be vulnerable enough to say that, whether they recognize that, they will say that. And that's something that I believe, whether it's in a playground environment with kids, or whether it's within a workplace environment, or in family dynamics. Sometimes if you're pushing for control, it's because you don't feel fully empowered. Now, at times, with the work that I do, you really encourage people to see the different sources of power that they have, because power comes from within. Some elements come from within a title or a job, but actually the more that people can understand their own power source, and the more confident that they become that it doesn't get taken away, the more confident that they become in showing who they really are. So we spend a little bit of time really unpacking that. And in terms of power, nobody can take that away from you. You can give it away. So for example, you can give it away when you put other people on a pedestal. You're giving them power over you. As going, well, no, this is the power that I've got. This is the power that you've got. You don't have to be up there.
And why do people? You think I hear you using the word power a lot, and I know for some people that will kind of make them twitch a little bit because and women aren't always comfortable with that. I mean, you're talking with leaders, but we're also talking about women leadership as well, in terms of not being a biatch. But why do some women kind of either feel that they have to be really strong and overpowerful, or why do we feel that that's a bit of a dirty word and makes us kind of twitch?
So there's definitely a generational aspect to this, and for many women, as they've developed and grown within a corporate environment in particular, at times those corporate environments have been so male dominated that the only way to progress is to adopt male behaviors and male patterns of use of power. And also, if you take that up to a macro, to a global level, kind of you have a number of male leaders who will exert their power in a coercive way, in a threatening way, in a dominant way, in a I've got the biggest missiles, or I've got the biggest economic power, or the biggest Twitter following, to kind of just attack. Whereas, power can come from the knowledge that you have, the information that you have, the insight that you have. Power can be a referent power. So if people like you, or if you have a community around you, or connections, a strong network, you have a power base. Sometimes it can be a charisma. Charisma is a form of power. It's, you know, it's who you are. People like to work with you. You can cajole, you can seduce, you have all these different sources of power, but very often the word power is associated with people who abuse power, who kind of use, coerce others to do things. And I think for many women that feels quite it feels negative, because we're looking at collective goals. Generally we collaborate more, look for tend to be more nurturing and developing others, and it's curious because we're almost allergic to the word power, but we also love empower. And the kind of imbuing of power in other people is like, well,
yes.
And empower kind of almost is that internal growth. And if you're listening in, I'm actually kind of making my body bigger and kind of more confident, and the shoulders are back, and I'm taking up more space because I'm feeling empowered, as opposed to I'm shrinking down in my seat. And that's a positive thing. And why should we let, as a woman leader, why should we let kind of those more macho guys own power when we have our own power sources, we have our own divine power, our own feminine power? Let's step into it. I want to have that conversation.
Yeah, and I think also you were talking about there's a consciousness about around leadership as well, isn't there? And while there are a lot of men that are conscious, in the sorts of worlds that you've been in, probably not too many of them are very conscious. So do you feel that part of that is from a female, because a lot of women, not all, but a lot of women are becoming a lot more conscious? Do you feel that we also have a role to play in sort of helping lead the way with men, to help them and show them actually it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to drop the mask and to drop the big I am, and come from that place? It's almost like creating a safe place for them to be able to be vulnerable.
Well, and I think the last 2 years has really done that for us. When you look at the shifts, some of the global shocks that have been going on, and then the shifts to home working, and the impact that that's had on mental health for men and for women, and the need to bring teams much more closely together. It's needed that personal connection between people. And so you're seeing, more and more vulnerability come through. I am overjoyed at some of the drives that are going on to encourage men's mental health. The biggest killer of men under 45 is suicide. I've lost family members through suicide, both young men, and it's because they feel lost and they feel trapped and they're not able to express themselves. And so I think it's so exciting that we're having the conversation about mental health, that it's becoming part of normal, and it should be normal within an organization as much as within the pub, within the family, or in other places, because with humans we have emotions, we have feelings, we need to express them. So whilst traditionally you're right, women have been more holistic, more authentic, more vulnerable in the workplace, I do see that shifting, and I see perhaps some of the younger generations coming through in their leadership roles as adopting that stance, as kind of saying, I don't want to be sucked into presenteeism. I don't want to be sucked into 50, 60, 70-hour weeks and away from my family. I want to, and kind of bossing people around, I want to create completely different organizations and this sense of team to bring everybody on together. I think the other aspect about why it's probably not so prevalent is there's a great author called Robert C. Maxwell, and I love his work on leadership, and he describes different levels of leadership, and he describes kind of that transition from somebody to become a technical leader, and then that archetypal middle manager, and as people grow, so their interests get much more broad, so they're looking out for the whole organization and harmony between different departments, or they're looking for harmony between that organization and the environment and the community that they're working in. They're starting to think about the longevity of their business. They're starting to reflect or think about succession planning. And the pinnacle of that leadership ladder, as it were, is a really empowered and really quite spiritual leader. So if you look at Buffett, for example, Warren Buffett, he spends an inordinate amount of time reflecting and researching and learning, and looks at kind of generational timelines. It's not always this short term. And so I think kind of we don't have enough exposure to the behaviors and practices of those most senior leaders who have perhaps achieved that not that nirvana, but that state of consciousness, been in that position.
And in doing that, it seems that it stops being about them,
yes,
as a leader. And have you seen, and then this is one of the benefits, I might have cut you short on my first question, but just going back to the benefits of why a leader should shift, if it stops becoming about you, the me, have you seen when people have taken this approach and changed their mindset to the bigger picture and to the generational improvement and caring about their team, have you found that has had a massive impact on their mental well-being and their feeling fulfilled?
Absolutely, because so if I can give you an example from my own working life, one of the most exciting roles I had was in a merger of 3 different family doctor environments, and so much needed to shift. But the more that you feel like it's about you and you have to be involved, the more you get pulled into conversations. And I was pulled into a series of meetings about uniforms and what colour of uniform, what style of uniform. And it's like, for me personally, it's not important. For you guys, it's really important. And you can look to me for a decision about whether it's going to be purple or green. And I'll make a snap decision because the decision needs to be made, but that will have a lasting impact. What I'd rather do is hand that over to you for you to make the decision, for you to make it. And as a leader, you make thousands of decisions, consciously or not, each day, just coming through. So you can, on a practical and energetic level, by letting go, you've reduced the workload on your own. And also you create an environment where people feel that they can react, they can put things in place, they can try things, they can come forward with suggestions as you start to let go. And they even come up with better suggestions than you might have. It's hugely exciting, or better suggestions together. So you create a much more free environment when you do let go, and kind of that. I have walked into so many environments where it's been command and control because it's felt safe for that control to be in place, both for the leader and for the people inside it. But actually it feels free and creative, and you get much better team synergy. You get better consistency, so that when that person's talking to a customer or somebody else in a different department, or somebody externally, they know and they understand where they're coming from. They feel empowered to make a decision. kind of when you've created that environment.
And there's the saying, when having a very effective, happy, fulfilled team in that kind of environment then reflects on you positively as a leader. Sure, it has to. Yeah.
So there have been so there's a whole school around that called servant leadership, which kind of really focuses on the needs of your servants. It's a really
very old word.
I know, but it essentially it says, in this sense of servant leadership, it's where the leadership becomes the person who lifts and empowers people that follow them. That's so probably follower leadership, really. And there are some very strong examples. Bill Gates had been put forward as a servant leader at times, really focused in on creating a team around him, helping them grow, and taking the shared glory, the benefits there as well. But it can be hugely empowering, and for me, it can trigger so much commercial growth when you can unleash that within your team.
And why, I mean, there's all these changes and things that we all know that everything's up for change at the moment. It all just seems, it can seem very confusing and chaotic. But how do you see this time right now, this time of great change? How do you see that being such a time of exponential potential?
Well, so for me, the only way that you can reach exponential potential is if you release some of the energy out to the team around you, and they're building their own momentum, they're building their own energy, they're bringing in new suggestions, they're spotting new market opportunities. That's where growth accelerates. That's how change happens. And it goes back to that old African proverb that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And genuinely, when you create that sense of community where everybody is contributing because they feel valued, because they feel listened to, because they feel safe, because they're able to bring creative conflict and challenge to, in order to move everybody forward, you can achieve that growth. And I think as well, the opposite is true, and very often we're hearing about the great resignation. We're hearing about people just silently resigning from their jobs, just turning up and doing what they need to do and moving on. And that's so damaging. It's so limiting.
It's a waste, isn't it? Such a waste of time and a waste of money
for everybody.
Well. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's this sort of type of leadership is critical, isn't it? It's crucial to creating a successful company, but also how, creating a very good balanced life, and stopping, as you said earlier, stopping with the 60-70 hour weeks. It's I think the working from home has, as you said, had a massive impact, and people are realizing have realized what's really important. And companies that are on the forefront of that are going to be the companies that succeed, aren't they, in the moving forward?
And companies that bring through that disrupt some of the old patterns of leadership and power will similarly change. And where you've got such a drive for diversity and inclusion, that can disrupt power, although it's not a guarantee that power will be disrupted. Because I've worked in many corporate environments where you may have a team that has multiple ethnicities, nationalities, qualities and characteristics, but they're still following the organization culture in terms of how power plays its way out, which kind of limits how effective it can be.
Great, thank you. Some of the things that you we touched on earlier, you touched on being busy. And we're all very, very good at being busy. So what do you mean by busyness is bad for business? What I've seen you say that expression, so I'd love you to expand on that.
You're right, and I think one of the reasons why we work such ridiculous hours is that we're caught in reactive mode, and also caught in work that's not really work, that doesn't necessarily move us forward, and it can be seductive because you can feel needed. It can feel like you're getting the job done, that you do things because you've always done them, but they chew up a lot of time. You feel special, but that's a big distraction from whether or not you're being effective. And unfortunately, you see that a lot with a number of meeting cultures, and Zoom doesn't help at all. And what you see instead is that people's diaries are filled with Zoom meetings, but they're doing work in the background as well, and the kind of little messages are going around, they're finishing off a report, they're not really present in the meeting. It's like, well, why are you having the meeting? Why not just have a shorter meeting, or not even a meeting at all? And it's a sense of, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to do this, I've got to be seen here. And it's a real distraction from the question of what adds value, what helps to push this team forward, this project forward, this business forward today.
Yeah, and it goes back to the ego, doesn't it, as well? Because it's kind of, we need to have a meeting. It's kind of can be reflected on self-importance, can't it? Meetings. Look at how many meetings I've got. I'm so important. Or look at how many meetings I'm asking you to come to. It's so important. I'm so important. But yeah, I love that you looking at what value is that meeting bringing to the organization, to a project. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day, and he works in security, and he has back-to-back meetings from 9 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock in the evening, all Zoom meetings. And he was even in a wellness meeting, and the wellness meeting was running over. So the person that was leading that meeting suggested that they have a quick 5-10 minute lunch break in a wellness meeting, which was it was very ironic. And he actually piped up and said, hang on a minute, this is a wellness meeting, so no, we need to. And he stood up for everybody, and everybody kind of applauded him, and well done, because he helped the person that was leading the meeting realize what they were asking. Because I think that sometimes you get so involved in what needs to get done, you forget what's important, or what you think needs to get done, you forget what's important. Yeah.
And I've worked in many different environments as a solopreneur, in small business environments, in large corporates. And when you go between them, especially from corporate to small business, you just feel unshackled. Kind of layer on layer of governance, and and often people feeling that they need to fulfill their role by adding a form all of these things. When you don't, you can move much faster when you truly examine whether that activity is needed, or how it could change. And that can happen on that personal level as well. With I'm a mum, and I know I'm busy from the crack of dawn to late at night, and running around doing packed lunches and everything else like that. But I also know that I'm not present when I'm running around. I'm kind of not a happy mum. I'm a busy mum. I'm not a happy mum. That's not necessarily a great relationship builder. When ironically, what I want to do is be a great mum. It's like, no.
Yes. So how do you
need to be present?
So how do you get present when you're a mum and you've got a family and you're running around, packed lunches, you've got meetings, you've got places to be, people to see. How do you get yourself present? How do you prevent going into that?
So kind of one of the tricks that I've discovered and developed further is around little micro hacks throughout the day. So there's different ways that they can come through. One of them can be around stopping and setting an intention before you start something. Now, it could be an intention about where it goes, or it could be an intention of how you feel in that meeting. But before you open the door, just say the word. Excited, or curious, or powerful, or attentive. And it's almost like a command, a self-command, that when you follow through, you'll try to be that. You'll try to experience that. You'll be looking for that. It does take some practice and some build-up, of course. And then the other is from work around positive intelligence, which is a 6-week program that I lead. You can do sensory hacks that are like micro meditations or micro moments of mindfulness throughout the day. The neuroscience behind it is that it disrupts neural pathways that were developed over time, and it allows you to think what you do next. But the very simple aspect is around, for example, taking the fingertips of one hand and ever so gently rubbing the fingertips and palm of the other hand, just so slowly that you can feel the ridges on each finger, and just pull those down. Now, that as a 10-second activity it stops the noise, just okay, and then you can move again.
I'm just doing that as Claire's explaining. I'm just taking touching my fingertips to the top of my fingers and just sliding them down the hand and the fingers and the hand ever so slowly. And if you're focusing on it and concentrating, which I was, it brings you to present, because you're focusing on the sensation of it, aren't you? You're focusing on the feel of it, which then, as you said, disrupts those pathways and helps you become present.
Yeah,
yeah, it's such a simple, awesome tool, Claire. That's fantastic. and anyone can do that.
I know. So the other one which is good for conversations. So we've all had conversations that you kind of just you get riled by, or you kind of wish that you weren't in.
I can think of a few.
So this is a really good one, and again, it focuses on the senses, and this uses the sense of sight. And you look at the eyebrow of the other person, and then you look at the color of the eyebrow and the thickness of the eyebrow, and then look at the individual hairs. Now, the other person sees that you're making excellent eye contact, so they think
yes.
But what you're doing just for that 10 seconds is really focusing there and then coming back, and it just stops the emotion, the kind of natural response. You can bring those in, but it's more intentional. Yes. And so you choose. Yeah.
I think the word intention is, having an intention and following it through, but having that conscious click in your brain. This is how I want to be in this meeting, or this is how I want to be in this conversation. And okay, how can I distract myself? How can I distract my brain? How can I distract myself from being triggered?
Yeah.
I know Claire Oatway. She told me this really fantastic, easy technique. So yeah, that's Claire Oatway, people. You heard it here. Fingers sliding down the hand very, very slowly and gently. And this just makes me laugh, though, staring at somebody's eyebrows without laughing, because that, you've got to be, you don't want to be someone having a go at you and you're just watching their eyebrows going up and down. But I can see if you're focused on the vision, the visual of the eyebrow and taking in the hairs, it will, I can totally see how that would work and get you really present, but distracted enough not to jump in with the emotion.
And if you're doing it for 2 minutes, you're daydreaming and you need to stop the conversation.
Zone out.
Seriously, 10 seconds or even, depending on the situation and what you're doing, 30 seconds is almost like for some activities, it's almost like a bath. It's just like okay, here I am. I'm centered, I'm present, I'm here. I choose to
So tell us a little bit about what you do for your clients and how you work. So I know that you work one-on-one coaching, and also you have a program. Tell us a little bit about those. That would be marvelous.
I'll quickly run through those. In terms of the one-on-one coaching, that's directly with leaders, and it brings through elements of theory as well. So it's a mixture of coaching and mentoring, really. I can't sit on my hands that much. I have to contribute. So I bring in theory around leadership. I bring in direct challenge around different approaches for strategy, different approaches for kind of people as personal leaders. And I think it's so important to cover both for business leaders, because you can cover off strategy and have the most amazing plan, the most amazing approach, but if your team isn't with you, it'll fall flat. Kind of 7% of transformation activities fail. It's like, because we're not focusing enough on leaders. So I do quite intensive coaching with individual leaders, but coming up soon, I'm running a 6-week program which is around the positive intelligence aspect. So it's around all of those little sensory hacks. It starts to dive into your saboteurs. So what's driving some of your decisions, some of your behaviors? How could your strengths be ironically holding you back from being, truly powerful? And other sage behaviors that could help you to progress and grow. So bringing through aspects of curiosity and empathy and vision and direction. Those are part of that. And that's a 6-week program that's supported by an app. There's daily activities every single day. You're learning techniques, you're learning more and more about the neuroscience and the cognitive psychology that's been explored, so that you can drive your own operating environment in your head. You can be in charge. That's coming up again soon. The details will be available on on my socials, so on Instagram and Facebook as Neon Juno, and also on the website. So it'd be great to see people and to just play with fingers and sounds
and eyebrows.
And eyebrows.
So people can reach you through your social, and I believe you offer a strategy call as well. So there's the link. We'll share that link here in this description of this podcast, so you can have experienced a strategy session with Claire. Highly recommend it.
And we can
sorry, go ahead.
We can go as deep as you like. So for some people it's alternative approaches to marketing. For other people it's this imposter syndrome problem I've got. So it's like, all right, so we're not going to solve that in half an hour, but let's have a go. Here's some tools and techniques. But
yes, so you give them, it's not just about learning about them, but they're actually probably experience a breakthrough as well and shift something quite powerful. Excellent. Marvelous. Is there anything else at all you would like to add, Claire?
No. It's I don't feel completely grilled, so thank you. You're
I hope not. It was lovely having you on. I always enjoy when we do I enjoy our podcast anyway, but I enjoy when we get together because we have a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So thank you very much, Claire. It was wonderful to have you here and for sharing your knowledge and your expertise. I'm sure that's helped the listeners. And if you have enjoyed the show, please like, share, subscribe, and we can't wait to tune in next time.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye.